I was wrong.
The Haygear's Ultracraft Reflex has become one of my go-to printers. Since my last video, the team at Haygear's have been working behind the scenes for some really exciting updates, and that's what I want to talk about today. We have new software upgrades, a completely new resin lineup, an innovative pulse release system that claims not only to speed up prints, but also increase reliability and reduce component wear, and finally, price changes too. So how do all these new changes play out, and how do they affect you?
Let's find out.
Hi, I'm James. This is Rising 8 Minis. This content isn't sponsored, but Haygear's did send me all the bits and pieces I use in the video. When I started writing about this video about a month ago, I was a little unsure about what to say about software upgrades. It's not the most exciting topic, is it? It was good to see the software developing, don't get me wrong, and seeing regular updates is usually a really good sign of a product that's being supported into the long term. Then this dropped. Blueprint Studio version 2 beta? Or something like that anyway. It's about as exciting as software upgrades get. Functionally, it remains the same. It still produces well-supported models with fine supports that, in my opinion at least, outperform market leaders like Chittiblox and Lychee. You still have the one-click option to orientate, support and slice models in, you guessed it, one click. But in reality, as a tool, it's a significant upgrade. Mainly due to the speed of the software. Everything's faster now, and apparently that's all due to a complete rebuild of kernels, or whatever that means. For a layman like me, it means when I click buttons, things happen faster. And I like that. It means I can switch the thing on, drop a model in, click one button, and have a file that's ready to print. And this is an important point. I'm not an expert with 3D software. Don't get me wrong, a major part of this channel is finding interesting things to talk about and diving right in and really getting into the weeds of this sort of stuff. But I've also got to be sensible and balance my normal life too. I've got 2 kids, I run a business, I have a YouTube channel to edit and all the rest of it, as well as all the general admin that goes with being a grown-up these days. And so I have to be sensible and ration out my time, because at the end of the day my hobby is not actually 3D printing, it's painting models. And the less barriers in the way of that, the better. So this is a good update and one I've only scratched the surface of so far. And if you find this interesting, I'm going to continue to explore and talk about this over on my Discord, so sign up as a patron and join me over there. Thanks. So now it gets a bit sexy. Let's talk about the resin range. Material science is one of the many topics that really floats my boat. So I thought we'd go into a little bit more detail about the entire Haygear's resin range, and you can tell me if that's interesting or not. For me, finding new ways to use my 3D printer to make cool stuff is, I don't know, it's one of the most exciting things about having a 3D printer. And so the Reflex system opened up a whole new frontier of options for me. But it also opened my eyes to just how expensive some of these resins can be. So when I made my Reflex video last time around, the range of resins consisted of PAT, PAU, PAP, and PAM10 resins. And since then, they've added PARP, PAC, PAWR, and PAH10 resins. They're all a little different, and some are dramatically different than others. But I think the most relevant change for you guys is the PARP resin. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit, because I've seen the PARP resins available for as little as $24.99 a litre, and even when they're on full price, they're $47.99 a litre, which bring the whole pricing system of the Reflex resins into the consumer territory for the first time. And that's cool. For put that in context, it's about the same price as Faux Hammer's Wargamer resins. And I think this deals with one of the major flaws of the system so far, which is affordability. But forget about that for a moment. Let's talk about the actual resins and what you use them for. So PAM10 is a CMYK and white colour mixing system. You can mix all the colours together to make any colour you like, and they all behave consistently with the same material properties. I featured this last time in my video when I made this incredible Evangelion bust, and just look at the tolerances on this thing. It is phenomenal. So this resin is cool, but it costs £95 a litre, and don't forget you're going to need 5 litres as a minimum to get your CMYK plus white. So it's certainly not cheap. And this is not a resin to neglect PPE on either. Seriously, this is like open it, take a sniff, get a headache level of chemicals. I don't even begin to use this, don't even open the bottles unless I got my full extraction system and all my masks and gloves and all the rest on. Seriously, you really shouldn't mess with this sort of stuff. So that's PAT10. PAT10 is probably the simplest to explain. PAT10 is transparent. It avoids yellowing, and it's cool for special effects such as visors, cockpits, or even better, force fields. Nice. A quick tip when you're using this though, let the air escape from the vat first. This shield was printed with loads of bubbles in the resin vat, and this one day later, and you can see the difference. Much like the Pan 10 though, this one costs £95 a litre and it stinks. It's easy enough to clean up though with just isopropyl alcohol and all the rest of it. Pack 10 is another one from the original range and it's what I've used most. It's their high quality, high detail resin and it's calibrated as such. The pack resin's for when you really want to get fine details. It's arguable whether you need this for minis, but for when you do need to hammer home that extra resolution, this is your puppy. The marketing says the resin will allow printer details down to 0.15mm, which is tiny, or about 10 hairs wide. In practice, this is what a 50nm model looks like, and this is what a 30nm model looks like. So the 30nm is sharper, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. And by the time you got paint on it, I doubt you'd be able to tell. The Pack 10 is a little bit cheaper than the other two at £70 a litre, but it's by no means cheap. So that extra detail does come at a cost. Now, the most relevant for anyone who's interested in printing miniatures is going to be the Parp 10 resin. But before we get there, I want to talk about two specialist resins. There's Por 10, which is a wear-resistant resin, specifically for things that need lots of handling or lots of abrasion. This could be minis, but probably not, because by the time you put any paint on a miniature, obviously the paint's going to rub off long before the resin does. So it sort of negates the point a little bit, you know? No, it's more for stuff like this ball-jointed figure, which will require lots of manipulation and moving and lots of handling, so it needs to be a little bit tougher. The other thing the marketing about this resin says is that you can't see layer lines from 20 centimeters away. And that's true, you can't. So that's nice. It's got a really smooth surface that's as hard as car paint. So I can already see a couple of uses for this type of resin, and this is available at £70 a litre. The second of those specialist resins is PAU 10, or POW 10. This is another £70 a litre resin, and the one I was quite excited about. It's an ABS-like resin, so it's strong and it's flexible. The marketing blurb says it's good for making items that need greater strength, like self-tapping screws, and I thought this was really exciting because I'm a nerd. So I printed some, and I can confirm they do print nice screws, but I couldn't quite get them to perform very well, and certainly nowhere near the same level as regular metal screws. I did talk to the Haygears support team about this, and they came up with us a couple of suggestions and suggested the reason they were a little bit more brittle was because I over-cured, so I'm running off a second batch as we speak and we're going to test that. So if you're interested in finding out about that, I'm going to update that over on my Discord. I also encountered a few rare supporting issues on this miniature, like this on the cape. It's not unfixable, and I'm broadly happy. Again, another good resin. Oh, and apologies by the way, because I actually didn't test the full resin range. Turns out I was missing the PAH resin, which is a high temperature resin. I don't have one of those to test, so apologies about that.
The resin I really think you should pay attention to is PARP 10, because it signifies an entirely new direction for Haygears, one that sees them really focusing in on the miniatures market, and I think that's important. Not only is the new resin aggressively priced at £47.99 a litre, but it shows that, combined with all the other little upgrades and lifestyle choices that make this printer so fantastic, Haygears is prepared to put its money where its mouth is in its commitment to this sector of the hobby. But there's no getting around it. £47.99, although comparable to other expensive resins like Wargamer, is still at the higher end of the market. But for Haygears, it's the lower end of their market. In fact, they actually call this resin a prototyping resin. Seriously, look at these models, the level of detail is incredible. I've not done any surface prep at all, just torn them straight off the models, and yeah, really cool. I know there are other resins in the pipeline as well, so yeah, watch this space. I am very excited to see what happens next.
And it's one of the reasons the Haygears has become my go-to printer of late. The main reason is I no longer need to think about all the settings and all the various other bits and pieces that go along with resin 3D printing. I just drop a cartridge into the back of the machine, drop my model into Blueprint, click, one-click slice, and then send it to the printer. And I know that every time I'm going to get a model that looks fantastic, that's properly supported, and yeah, that's what I'm after at the end of the day. It just saves me so much time and, most importantly, brain space. So when I need something that just works, the Haygears is my go-to. Now, if that's convinced you about this printing system, the awesome folks over at Heygears have given me an offer code which gives you £200 off the price, as well as some free resin, and you can find that linked down below. And if you do buy a printer, I get a small fee too, and that's what helps fund these videos and keeps videos like this sponsor free. Sales pitch over. Thanks. Now, this is a feature I really want to talk to you about, because, as I said earlier, one of the things I really like about this channel is it allows me to explore all the new tech that's revolving around miniature painting. And this is a really different approach. This is the Heygears pulse release system. What I love most about it is it's a completely new approach to reducing peeling forces. There are loads of different approaches coming to market, so it's an exciting time to be into 3D printing. The wildly popular Saturn IV and Mars 5 Ultra, which I tested a couple of weeks back, approach this in a different way with a tilting vat, which has its own flaws, which I talk about them there. Or the Anycubic M7 Pro, which is the fastest next-gen printer I have ever used, which appears to achieve this through sensors and algorithms and witchcraft. And again, I've got an upcoming review of that printer too. But with the Heygears Reflex, it uses the pulse release system, i.e. a small compressor, which when teamed up with a specialised vat, allows the compressor to pump air in between two FEP sheets, causing a bubble which causes the model to peel off and reduce the peeling forces, which not only allows the print to speed up, but also reduces the wear on components and supposedly doubles the life of your FEP. Cool. So all those features work, and I'm excited to see what other manufacturers come up with next. There's always some cool innovation going on, and I'm sure there's stuff I'm missing. I know Formlabs, for example, have a different system too. Who else am I missing? Tell me down in the comment below. But don't get me wrong here, this piece of kit is not going to be for your typical hobbyist. Cool though it is, it costs £700, which is more than most printers cost on their own. So that's for the compressor itself, but also the new vat you need to run it. Now I can attest it's faster, but it's not as fast as the new Anycubic, which is the fastest 3D printer I've ever used, nor is it as fast as the new generation of Elegoo Ultras. But I don't think that's the point. Don't forget, this machine is not aimed at hobbyists, it's aimed at prosumers or smaller professionals. And so the point is to reduce fails and reduce the cost of materials and consumables. The idea being that if you can cut the cost of materials, and it's not quite as simple as this, but potentially a litre of resin goes from costing £70 a litre to £70 for 1.2 litres, or £56 a litre. Times that by just 10 bottles and you've saved yourself 140 quid. And you can quickly see how in a commercial environment, that makes a lot of sense. It's hard to justify for a home user though, unless your time is really critical or something like that. Regardless, this is a really cool piece of kit, and I'm excited to see if this gets adopted more widely in the future. So I made this video because I'm interested in the topic, but also because I wanted another crack at reviewing a printer which has quickly become my go-to and talking about it because I just love this thing. And I appreciate this whole video sounds like a sales pitch, but genuinely, I want to talk about products on this channel that I use day in, day out, and that are really improving my hobby. Because, well, that's kind of the point of this whole thing, right? And it's not just me. I know Fohammer's just updated his top 10 printers list to include this one right at the top. And now you have a £200 discount with free resins, and the cost of resin is nearly halved. This has really come into its own as a high-end but achievable printer for professional users. For me though, I just like tools that work, and this just works. I don't mess about with supporting models, playing with settings or any of that nonsense. I just drop in files, hit the one-click slice button, and in one click, I've got a sliced and supported model. I send that file to the printer and I print it. That's it. I know the locked-in ecosystem is a pain in the arse, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So if that's a deal breaker for you, then fair enough. I get it. Greedy 3D did prove that you can use other resins on it, but it's not something I tend to do. I am a big fan of simplicity, and dropping in cheaper cartridges of resin is my idea of good. But I'm in the very fortunate position where people send me resin, so I'm hardly unbiased in that opinion, and I acknowledge that. But I think most importantly, I have yet to see a better model come off any printer I have used. So if you want to print the best models you possibly can on a 3D printer at the moment, you got to be buying the Heygears. It's as simple as that. So if you enjoy positive tech reviews about the 3D printing miniature space, then consider subscribing. Or perhaps you want to join our community of printers, painters, or just generally awesome folks. In that case, head over to my Discord and jump in. But consider joining my Patreon, where for £3 a month you get exclusive access to not only really cool 3D printable files, but also my painting workshops, such as Marco Frassoni and Riccardo Agostini, all of which are coming in 2025. But be fast if you want Marco tickets, because at the time of making this video there's only 3 left and they've not even gone on general sale yet. To all my existing Patreon users and Discord users, thank you so much for putting up with me. I really appreciate you. And yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.